So they said, we're going to give your son through the IBM Eugenics Trust. That's IBM is a trust for eugenics on record. We are going to give your son, the headship of this because, we can't have the public knowing the government really runs all these. And that's really on record for anybody that wants to look. And so the entire thing then, he takes the entire fortune of Microsoft and funds it into eugenics publicly.
Yes, and now he's come out, of course, as the big hero philanthropist. They all must pay back their masters who brought them up there by becoming philanthropists, just like George Soros. And what are they into? They're into Planned Parenthood across the planet, and abortions, sterilizations, vasectomies, etc. That's really where their money goes. But here's the same man now in with the military-industrial complex, Mr. Gates, with specialized mosquitoes they want to release all over the third world countries, supposedly to help reduce the mosquito population by introducing sterile male mosquitoes. These things are going to carry bacterium and viruses very, very rapidly.
No, that's what he said. They're going to put vaccines in them, and because the Africans won't take the shots, they're going to engineer it into potatoes and carrots.
Yes.
That's on record. Stay there. Incredible information. Alan Watts, our guest.
The New World Order beast is genetically modifying your food, mixing vegetables with animals, and now experimenting with viruses. Without a long-term food solution, you will have just two options: starve, or surrender. All canned food supplies will eventually run out. What then? Grow your own healthy food and feed your family forever. SurvivalistSeeds.com is now the nation's largest bulk heirloom seed company, and it's owned by a real patriot, Big John Lipscomb. You can now have an infinite amount of healthy vegetables like a watermelon, a bundle of carrots, or tomatoes for a little more than a penny each. SurvivalistSeeds.com. And now you can go into business with Big John at SurvivalistSeeds.com by becoming an affiliate. See his link at SurvivalistSeeds.com.
All right, going back to Alan Watt from CuttingThroughTheMatrix.com. Alan, before we get back briefly into the globalist master plan and the current operations and then take some calls, you have been having some problems with your 3 or 4 websites. You wisely had some mirrors of CuttingThroughTheMatrix.com, but now you've been having a lot of problems, and people should know that you've been under a bit of an attack. They're trying to take your registration names away, though you registered them years ago and own them. They're not letting you upload to your servers, though you've paid in advance for a year. And you're not getting any answers from Yahoo on this, are you?
Well, they rectified it the other day, suddenly, because so many people were protesting and calling them. And this went on for a week and a half. They suddenly stopped me uploading to 2 of the main sites. And no explanation was given. I talked to about 5 different people over the course of a week and a half, and they wouldn't let me talk to any of the engineers who could possibly have given me the technical problem. There was no technical problem. They simply put a lock on it. And someone had obviously, from above, given them the suggestion to do this. So it's from a high source. Now, at the same time this was happening, friends of mine, people I know in other countries, were getting in touch with them, asking if they knew me, and why they were taking out domain names in my name. Now, anyone can do this across the planet if they want to. It's quite legal, you see. But they wanted to know what the connections were and so on. So, as I say, after a bombardment of listeners to Yahoo and me mentioning it on the air night after night, they suddenly fixed the problem and couldn't tell me what it was. And I'm on unlimited disk space, so it wasn't that was the problem. They'd actually set me back from about 9.5 gigs, which I was at that present time maximum, with unlimited disk space to go. They set me back to 6.5.
Well, look, I mean, we have sophisticated hack attacks against us on record from the big ISPs. They certainly, the Pentagon's announced they're going to attack American and European media that criticizes the New World Order. They've now said on the news they're going to start killing journalists. There's famous video of the tanks driving up and killing Reuters journalists over in Iraq. Okay, let's accelerate, but thank God it's back up. Let's accelerate Alan Watt here now through their master plan, and if they're able to succeed, what they're going to set up, and then take calls.
Yes, they've published the books, in fact, from the United Nations, and a whole host of umbrella organizations under the United Nations have published their own books on the future cities. I should mention that back in the 80s, I met the man who owns the polo team that Prince Charles belongs to. And he is a big Canadian. He owns hundreds of corporations and companies across the U.S. and Canada and Europe. He has an estate in Ireland. He's a lord, and an estate in London. And he's also an amateur, although professional architect. And through a strange set of circumstances, which I didn't understand at the time, he showed me his drawings for the future cities. And one of them, this is about 1982, one of them was a domed city over a much smaller Toronto, under a sort of glass type dome. And he didn't explain why it would be a dome or anything else. And I said, well, that's a much, much smaller Toronto. He says, that the population will be that small, he says, in about 30, 40 years. No explanation given. But then a person who works for the United Nations sent me a book on the future domed cities for the perfect societies across the world. And it's right along the agenda that H.G. Wells and so on talked about. Everyone will be reared in a sort of creche dome. You won't know your parents. That's exactly what the Soviet system was supposed to be based on, but it wasn't Marxist enough. They tried it in Israel when they set up Israel, by the way, where the children would be brought up communally, wouldn't know who their parents were. You'd be trained in there up to a certain age, then you'll go to a school dome, then you'll be designated a work dome, and then you'll have your adult life dome as you work, and then you would put it into a geriatric dome, all nice and organized, like a control freak had planned your whole life for you. This is the world's structured society they want to create, but this is for the ones who will be doing most of the work, for the elite.
And Alan, I'm not trying to start fights here because it's very destructive to get into fights with people that, are similar to our views on the New World Order. There was a big film made. They used a lot of my footage and other people's footage, and it was supposedly anti-New World Order 9/11 truth. Then their next film called for the dome cities, and a robot will run everything, and it'll be a totally controlled society, and the maker said that I would have to be put in a re-education center, but that I couldn't intellectually understand and grasp why this had to be done. No, I understand the power trip these people are on, and I kept saying to them, I heard all this 100 years ago from the eugenicist. What you're saying is right out of the Soviet model, right out of the Fabian socialist model. This is the New World Order. And they'd say, no, it's not. And I'd say, but that's a fact.
Yep.
Even these drawings and diagrams aren't new. I'm not starting a fight with these filmmakers. Mm-hmm. I'm just stating a fact. And they got very, very angry and started attacking us, and then play this mental game of saying, no, this is something totally new. Alan, you know what I'm talking about, don't
Absolutely.
you? This is not totally new, is it?
Not at all. The whole 20th century was mapped out, including the wars, because people like H.G. Wells, who was a founder of the Fabian Society, who was picked up by Sir Thomas Huxley, the grandfather of the Huxley, the best friend of Charles Darwin. He picked a whole bunch of young men up. He taught them in the red tie school. They're all given red ties for revolution. They're all guaranteed to become very famous because unlimited financing would give them complete access to all media. And they were to go out there and be propagandists for this eugenics, utopian, scientifically run society.
And they did the predictive programming to set the maps of man so people would follow this predetermined system. And then they wrote books bragging they'd done this. None of this is our opinion.
That's right. And also, Wells himself said that we need a world war. And after World War I, he said not enough people have come to their knees. They've not given up national sovereignty. He said we need another world war to bring this into existence. World War II brought in the United Nations. And every country signed on to it, and that's when all sovereignty was signed away. And the whole future agenda was begun to be implemented in reality. So the whole 20th century was planned, you see, including what they have planned for this century. This is to be the century of change. Every top professor across the planet in academia has talked about the century of change for the latter part of the 20th century, talking about the 21st century. Obama's whole premise was change is good. No one asked him what he's talking about. What change are you talking about? This is Ages, as they reduce the population, they bring through the creme de la creme, as they say. They get rid of the weak, the unfit, the mental unstable, anyone with hereditary physical or mental problems. And that's in the book by H.G. Wells called The Modern Utopia.
But, this is what I want to bring up to you, but when you really read their literature, they sell their lower-level minions who are on little petty power trips that, oh, you're part of the elite society, we're going to cull everybody. They don't tell them that they're going to be culled as well, or that it's not just positive and negative eugenics that is taught, that, oh, we're going to get rid of the inferiors and advance the elites. The elite actually is waging war against those that are intelligent, that are bright, that they're actually, that's their main target, and that these control freaks are trying to wreck society to accelerate their master plan. So really, I mean, you can argue with their stated goal of a better world and a healthier elite.